I had a shadow person jump on top of me while I was wide awake. It had a crazy Cheshire grin on its face. Once it got on top of me, I was unsuccessfully able to roll out of the way. I passed out. It was hands down the craziest thing I have ever experienced. I had no idea that shadow people were a real thing. I wasn't paralyzed, nor did I have or have ever had sleep paralysis. I tried to fight it off me, but became so tired and apathetic so fast, I could do nothing about it. I just told myself that I needed to remember this when I woke up. When I woke, I felt like I had been hit by a bus and was extremely tired. This experience truly blew my mind. This happened 14 years ago, when I was 17 years old. It happened in my childhood home, which in a previous post, I explained a lot of strange things happened there. This is the most terrifying experience I have ever had with the paranormal to date. I always knew my house was haunted. I would see things out of the corner of my eye, hear weird noises, and just have strange things happen. I really tried to convince myself that part of it was my imagination and my own interest in the paranormal. But one February night, I would experience something that, to this day, makes the hair stand up on my neck. When I was 17, my parents separated. I opted to stay in the family home with my father. My father relapsed during this time and was a heavy alcoholic, so I was left alone quite a bit. To get a better picture of this story, I need to explain how my house was laid out. The living room was huge. The couch was placed on one wall that had a window into the kitchen. No glass, just a cutout rectangle that let us see each other from the kitchen to the living room. To get to the kitchen, you would have to go through the office and hallway all around the house. In the back of the kitchen is the stairs to the basement, and our back door that leads to our backyard, which has its own road access, as we parked in the back of our house. One night, I was alone. I had always been a night owl, and it was about 2 a.m. when this event happened. I was sitting on my couch watching CSI, and I heard my back door open and close. This isn't unusual, as my uncle lived close by, and the closest access was through the back lane from our backyard. My first thought was annoyance. If my dad was coming through the back door, he was probably coming from my uncle's, and he would be extremely drunk. I called out, "Dad?" No answer. Annoyed that he wasn't responding, I yelled out, "Dad!" Again, no answer. At this point, I'm pissed off, because if he isn't responding to me, then he's really drunk, and I hated dealing with him like that. I got up from the couch and turned around to look through the window to the kitchen that showed the kitchen and the back door, and I said, "Dad!" And I stopped as soon as I saw it. At first, I couldn't believe what I was looking at. Standing in the middle of my kitchen was a 7 or 8 foot black silhouette. I could see this thing's head, shoulders, arms, legs, but no facial features. It was black, the blackest of black. I was terrified. I whispered, "Dad," one last time, just to make sure I wasn't dreaming or hoping it was a practical joke. No answer, no movement. Just this tall dark shadow peering at me. I quickly ran toward the desk across the living room, grabbed an envelope knife, as it was my only weapon available, and walked around the corner to the porch, picked up my boots, this is February in northern Canada, and silently stood there, waiting to see what would happen if I stayed. At this point, I was a little bit curious, and that trumped my fear at the time. After standing for what seemed like hours, and it was probably minutes, I could hear creaking coming from the kitchen. My cat walked past me from the living room and toward the kitchen. She looked into the kitchen and all of a sudden started acting strange. She moved on one leg at a time in a stiff motion, with all of her hair raised. And once she was out of whatever trance she was in, she bolted upstairs. At this point, I was done. I ran out of the door and ran barefoot in the snow until I felt safe. I put my boots on and continued to walk to our local convenience store to call my dad. My dad was sober at his girlfriend's and agreed to come get me and bring me home to investigate. He went to the house first and inspected everything. He couldn't find anything out of the ordinary. I then hesitantly went inside and told him it came through the back door. We walked to the back door and he said, "How? It's locked." The color drained from my face as I myself had to turn the handle and try to open the door, but it wouldn't open. I don't know what happened that night, why this entity showed itself to me, or what it wanted. I do know that it terrified me. I refused to sleep in the house for weeks, and to this day, even discussing it makes my eyes water and hair stand up. Something came into my house that night, and I have no idea what it was. This didn't happen to me, but to my mom when I was around 10 or 11. She isn't one to believe in anything supernatural or to make up one of these stories, and seems genuinely terrified when she tells me this story, so I personally believe her. My mom was driving home at night. It wasn't too late, around 7 p.m. after the sun went down. She was driving down a long narrow street near our house, surrounded on both sides by thin strips of woods where we often have sightings of wild deer, turkeys, and coyotes. She was shocked to see a humanoid figure stumbling across the road toward her headlights. The thing is, he didn't shield his eyes or anything. In fact, as she got closer, it looked like he had no facial features whatsoever. Just a smooth head, think Slender Man. He had a strange limp and seemed in danger or hurt. But my mom noped the fuck out of there and sped the rest of the way home to tell me what had happened. She said that she didn't sleep that night, fearing that thing might come back. I have no clue what it was to this day. I can only imagine many have seen and posted about it here already. I haven't searched to check. When I was 7 years old, I lived in a small town in the mountains of British Columbia. Really small, like a few thousand at most. We were isolated. The house was huge, way too big for our 3-person family in fact. I had the bedroom upstairs, down the hall from my parents, and I always slept with the doors open out of fear. I hated being in closed rooms at night. One night, a literally dark and stormy night, no cliche for effect, I woke suddenly. I remember the rain pattering on the window above me, and the trees whooshing in the wind as they do. If I had to guess, it must have been somewhere between 1 and 3 a.m. I distinctly remember that feeling. You know how you wake up in the middle of the night and have at least a general sense for the time? My bed was right across from the last door in the hallway, like against the wall, with my head closest to a corner and my feet closest to the door. Like, if I pointed my toes, the door was there, about 6 feet away. If I woke up on my back, I'd be looking right at it if I just raised my head a bit. And that's exactly what happened that night. I saw it then. As soon as my eyes registered the space around me, in my doorway, the HATMAN. A motionless, black void, like a glitch in the Matrix. Like someone had just wiped all the physical space from the area it took up and left a black hole. But it wasn't shapeless. I saw a trench coat, tapering upwards as they do, and a rimmed hat on its head. It did make a noise and didn't move, and I mean not at all. It was absolutely devoid of depth, beyond the 2D shape of a large trench coat and rimmed hat wearing man, and motion and color and everything. It was pure blackness. It looked exactly like this, and I mean exactly. I felt pure dread overwhelm me, and I remember pulling the blankets over my head after about 2 or 3 seconds of seeing it. I remember screaming for my parents, who were down the hall. And that's the last thing I remember, until waking up the next morning, still in bed. I ran down the hallway immediately, woke my parents up and told them what I saw. They, in a just woke stupor, assured me it was a dream and that I shouldn't worry. But I know what I saw. Years later, probably somewhere between 17 and 20, being that I never forgot it in full detail and thought of it rather often, several times a year, every year, I decided to Google shadow person with hat or something close to it. I believe I saw the picture linked above first in images, or something very close, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. That was fucking it. That was what I saw. How the fuck was it online? They call it the HATMAN. Thousands of people have seen this thing all over the world. I read tons of the accounts. Some came off as delusion, some came off as fiction, but many, just like my experience. This was as validating as it was harrowing. It was fucking real. That thing was in my doorway when I was a child, and my memory had apparently been erased after I saw it and hid under the blankets. A lot of good that would do, until the next morning waking up. What the fuck happened? I still have no idea what the fuck that thing was in my doorway, or what happened between pulling the blankets up in the morning. I guess I never will. I've never seen it again, but my life has been utterly disturbing time and time again, other than just this experience. This was the first of a long line of inexplicable, frightening bullshit that seems to never go away, in one way or another.